You won't believe the chaos going on in the EV market. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion, with the whole industry on the brink of collapse. Hold off on buying an EV for now because the middle class just got sucker punched by a harsh reality check. It turns out, EVs might not be the golden ticket we were promised. They could be more of a scam. And guess what? Our dear political leaders are pushing us to buy these overpriced EVs while hiding some inconvenient truths. Seriously, why are dealerships sprinting away from EVs like they're on fire? And what's with the ghost towns of unsold EVs in the so-called graveyards? Even with Joe Biden throwing billions of dollars into the mix, people are still not biting. It's like the EV dream has turned into a full-blown nightmare, and I'm here to spill the beans on why it all went wrong. If you're in the market for an EV that won't break the bank, you've got to the right place because this video could save you a boatload of cash. Here's what's going down. Ford, GM, Tesla, Jeep, and basically every big name in the game have slammed the brakes on EV production. Biden's pushing hard to sell us on EVs, but let's face it, we're not buying it anymore. And let me tell you, those EVs aren't as environmentally friendly as they make them out to be. But before I dive into the reasons behind this crash, let's take a closer look at how it's going to impact us. The EV market has taken a nosedive, causing havoc for not just one, but multiple companies. And just how bad is it? Well, let's put it this way. Ford has practically given away EVs at a loss of $36,000 per car. Tesla's been slashing prices like there's no tomorrow, doing it over 3 times in a single quarter. And if you wander into a dealership, you'll find thousands of EVs gathering dust, unsold and unwanted. On average, used EVs are now a whopping 33.7% cheaper compared to October 2022. That's a jaw-dropping average price reduction of $17,862. In October 2023, the average used EV was going for $34,999, down from a hefty $52,821 just a year prior. Even Teslas, which usually hold their value well, have seen significant drops. The Model X, for instance, plummeted by $2,775, while the Model S and Model 3 saw cuts of $185 and $14,716 respectively. But what about those who've already taken the plunge and bought an EV? Well, they're feeling the pinch too, facing 3 major hidden cost hurdles that caught them off guard. I'll get into those in a bit, but first, let me tell you how you can avoid falling victim to this crash. According to the latest sales report, used EV sales have plummeted by 30% this year. While new EVs are taking twice as long to sell compared to non-EVs, customers are steering clear of EVs for 3 main reasons: high entry price, limited range, and inadequate charging infrastructure. So why not stick with good old combustion cars? They're affordable, straightforward, and they do the job. It's not just a few brands feeling the burn, it's the entire EV industry sweating it out. Sales are down across the board, setting off a chain reaction of trouble. And here's the kicker. Used EVs are about as desirable as a skunk in a flower shop. They're practically impossible to offload, with their value dropping by a whopping 30% year over year. Just take a look at the Tesla app and check the depreciation on a 2020 model. It's down to 50% of its initial value in just 3 years. And that's not even factoring in the battery degradation, but let's save that discussion for later. High interest rates and greedy dealer markups are really putting a squeeze on people trying to afford EVs. Even Tesla's Elon Musk has hit the brakes on plans for a new factory because of this mess. It's a big deal when the king of EVs starts getting cold feet. And here's a twist you might not expect. The raw material prices for EV batteries are dropping. You'd think that's a good thing, but it's actually a red flag. It means demand is slowing down and the market's getting jittery. Ford's even dialing back, cutting shifts at their F-150 Lightning plant. And over in Japan, Nidec shares took a nosedive due to all this uncertainty. It's like a global freakout. So what's the deal for us? Well, if you're thinking about getting an EV, you might want to hold off for now. The market's on a downward spiral and things are only going to get crazier. Now here's something shocking. In China, where EVs are selling like hotcakes, there's an EV graveyard with over 10,000 EVs just sitting there. It's a clear sign of government failure in their feeble attempt to sweep it under the rug. The Chinese and the Germans had grand visions for EVs, thinking people would buy them at any price. But then they got hit with billion-dollar losses. While American customers have been slower to embrace EVs, Ford and GM have already thrown over $3 billion into the F-150 Lightning and the Silverado EV. You'll find hundreds of these in dealer lots. But guess what? There's no demand for their EV counterparts. Alright, so we're all aware the market's headed for a crash. But what about those abandoned EVs? The environmental impact is huge. Each car's battery is packed with valuable materials like nickel, lithium, and cobalt, vital for the sustainability of the EV industry. Rapidly ditching these vehicles undermines their supposed environmental benefits, which take years to realize. But there's still hope. Companies could just stop making EVs if they're not selling and go back to combustion and hybrids, right? Well, not exactly. There's a bigger player pulling the strings here. You can't say no to them. Production keeps rolling. All we see is the middle class struggling. The Biden administration's crazy about EVs, and they've made it clear it's EVs or bust. We're stuck with those high prices, luring people into easy monthly payments. And guess what? How many of you out there are shelling out over $300 a month for your car? Dealers are fed up. 3,000 of them banded together to give Biden an earful in a fiery letter. These dealers from every corner of the country and representing every major car brand voiced their concerns over the administration's push towards electric vehicles. Their argument is simple yet alarming. EVs aren't selling as expected, and dealerships are drowning in unsold inventory despite incentives and price cuts. Slow down the transition and stop forcing the common man into buying EVs. Oh, and by the way, did you know you'll need a $6,000 insurance policy for your EV? Yeah, no joke. Let me explain for a minute. Listen up carefully. Let's dive into the expenses of owning an EV. When EVs first hit the roads, they were celebrated as the future of motoring. Cleaner, greener, and supposedly cheaper in the long run. However, the reality of maintaining and insuring an EV is quite different. Repair costs can be surprisingly high. For example, even a minor collision that damages an EV's battery can lead to exorbitant repair bills. You might think a small dent or scratch on a battery casing wouldn't be a big deal, but insurance companies see it differently. They often require complete battery replacements for even the slightest damage. This can turn a $1,000 repair job into a staggering $155,000 expense, all due to insurers' strict standards and car manufacturers' cautious approaches to battery integrity. Now let's dive into the world of EV insurance costs, which are becoming a major hurdle for owners. EV owners are seeing their insurance premiums shoot up dramatically. Some have even tripled, which is a real shock for those who thought they'd save on running costs. Take Tesla owners for instance. They've gone from reasonable premiums to jaw-dropping figures, hitting as high as $6,000 per year. The surge in insurance costs is partly because repairing EVs is more expensive and there are perceived risks associated with their batteries. And amidst all this chaos, President Biden has come up with yet another wild anti-EV mandate. There's a new directive essentially telling federal government employees, hey, it's EVs or nothing for official travel, or there'll be consequences. This means giving priority to electric vehicles, trains, and public transportation for all government business. In his previous campaign, Biden made some bold claims about reducing emissions, and now, as the elections draw closer, he's pulling out all the stops to promote EVs, even if it means phasing out combustion engines. The White House is really doubling down on tailpipe emissions rules. They put forward some of the toughest regulations ever, aiming to make a huge portion of new vehicle purchases electric by 2032. This is a big deal because it's not just about promoting EV use, it's also about making it harder to stick with gas-powered cars. Critics argue that these moves could drive up costs for consumers. Plus, there's the whole issue of EV supply and the infrastructure needed to support them. Charging stations, energy grids, you name it. There's a lot that needs to be in place for all of this to work. And let's not forget the geopolitical aspect. Many of the essential materials for EV batteries come from overseas, especially China. So transitioning to EVs also means navigating international politics and trade. So what we're witnessing here is a massive push from the US government to not only encourage, but forcefully propel the country towards electric vehicles. It's ambitious, it's daring, and it's bound to be an intriguing ride to see how this all unfolds. The politicians are taking the wheel while companies are turning a blind eye to their customers' desires. But all of this is boomeranged. and the consequences are going to be far worse than anyone anticipated. Do you believe that political leaders are manipulating the EV market? Will EVs become affordable anytime soon? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I just posted a video with groundbreaking news that could shake up the entire EV industry. Check it out if you want to be truly amazed by what's about to unfold with EVs.